Welcome to Kevin and Brian's Horror Drive-In Theater Podcast, where each week we cover the latest horror news, shorts, and a couple of creature feature reviews. This week, after the news, we'll cover the old drive-in classic Leprechaun, followed by a discussion of the short film Blinky, and the modern horror feature film Leprechaun Returns. Stick around here at the drive-in. It's almost fully dark outside.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And welcome to the drive-in. First up, we have this week's news. First thing we're going to talk about is the Sci-Fi Channel is rebooting Night Gallery, as reported by iHorror.com.
I approve of this project.
You remember the original?
I do, and I loved it. It was another of Rod Serling's work, after The Twilight Zone. And he did the introductions.
He would have a painting every week where he'd come out and show the painting and give some sort of little creepy introduction where the story that followed relates to that painting.
And they were definitely scarier and creepier than The Twilight Zone. Less sci-fi, more horror. I remember them being a lot of good stories.
Less 50s and 60s level TV and more 70s level horror.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you think you'll watch some of these?
I will definitely watch these.
Okay. Next up, we have the Toxic Avenger reboot.
I don't approve of this project.
It sort of seems a little unnecessary.
Well, the original was so campy and so classic in its own way. How are they going to make it better? Why do they need to do a reboot?
It was low budget, they knew it was low budget, and they ran with it, and honestly, I still don't like it. I never did really like the Toxic Adventure too much, but at least it's entertaining in its stupidity.
I do. Trauma did some mighty fine work.
And that's what they had, yeah.
And at least this does have Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Herz from Trauma Films involved in the production.
Which is good.
So there's at least that, but I don't know. How can they make it better than it was?
Well, if they're going to make it low budget and silly like it was, or are they going to try to make a serious reboot with money this time?
That's what I'm wondering. You know, like a big budget, it just can't be the same either way, I don't think.
Okay. Well, not looking forward to that one too much yet. We'll wait. We'll wait and give that one the benefit of the doubt until it comes out.
I'll still have to see it, though.
Yeah. Speaking of something we'll probably end up seeing, Netflix has revealed the Season 3 episode titles in the new Stranger Things release for the third season.
They call it a teaser, and it is indeed just a teaser. It's the title and the title of the episodes and some music. And that's all you get to know at this point.
Yeah, the red Stranger Things titles logo sort of zooms in and assembles. Well, episode titles pop up on the screen.
But Stranger Things was great. And if you haven't seen it, you really should. When Season 2 ended, I was ready to watch Season 3. I was ready for more.
And they made you wait for it.
They're still making me wait for it.
Yeah. There's going to be how many of these? 5, they said?
Yeah, I think so.
That sounds about right.
And they're running into a problem, and I guess it was already a little bit of a problem on this one. The kids are aging faster than the storyline is going. Because, you know, like 1 year passes, but it's a couple years for the kids, and they're growing fast. And so that's going to start showing more as each season goes on. I don't know how they're going to handle that.
Could just pace it out. The kids grow, or each series is 2 years after the other, or something like that.
They could start inserting time, yeah. Or just have them, you know, in their early 20s playing high school kids still. TV shows do that.
Next up, Rob Zombie says Otis will be worse than ever in the new movie 3 from Hell. So Rob Zombie's working on a new movie in 2019, and this one is in the same universe as The Devil's Rejects and, of course, House of a Thousand Corpses. This, I guess, will be the third in that series. So, are you familiar with Otis?
I'm not very familiar. I think I've seen part of the first movie. I've seen some of Rob Zombie's other work, and I do enjoy it. I just haven't seen these yet.
Definitely we have to do The Devil's Rejects on here.
Mm-hmm.
That alternates between ultra-violent and just insanely silly.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen the movie, the scene with the chickens, I mean, what you going to do with those chickens? I'm not going to go any further than that, but what are you going to do with those chickens?
I like how Rob Zombie his monsters are just real people. I think in all of his movies, aren't there? There's never any magic or real, quote, monsters.
No, they're all crazy or stalkers or just murderers or something like that.
Even his remake of Halloween, I thought the original kind of implied some supernatural forces with Michael Myers, and in Rob Zombie's version, it was just a big crazy guy, which isn't a bad thing, but the magic isn't there in his movies. No magic, no, just crazy people.
Yeah.
Very crazy people.
I don't know. It was the original Halloween, was he really magical at that point? He was just sort of a crazy guy.
There was some implications that
He kept getting up after being damaged.
Yeah.
Crazy people will do that sometimes.
Well, yeah, the way he was homed in on her, and yeah, there was some implications of some supernatural forces, I think.
Well, okay.
I think so.
You can go there.
Yeah, and clearly not in Rob Zombie's.
Okay, so fans of Supernatural will be glad to hear that Jeffrey Dean Morgan will be reprising his role as John Winchester, the father, on the 300th episode of Supernatural this year coming up. What do we think about this?
He's going to come in swinging a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire? No, that's a different series. I'm going to have a hard time not picturing him with that in his hand after seeing The Walking Dead. But I think that he's a skillful enough actor that he can pull it off. I'm looking forward to it. I liked him in Supernatural.
What little he was there.
Yeah, he wasn't a lot. Because it's all in flashbacks. He was their dad when they were kids and was pretty much out of the picture.
No, they found him at the end of season 1. He was in a few episodes.
Yeah.
Some of season 2 as a live character.
Yeah, but not very much. Not at all.
He's never been a real big part of the series, even though he was like the central figure that everything revolved around the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was never big as far as the character goes.
Right.
Well, 300 episodes is a lot.
It is.
I remember I was impressed when Stargate SG-1 hit 200 episodes.
And I still watch the show, and I'm entertained.
Yeah.
Although it does seem...
It does have some draggy parts now and then, but it's overall, I still like it.
For the most part, it's keeping me going, yeah.
Those guys never need to work again.
What a career. Sure. Yeah, 300 episodes. And make a living off that show.
You think John will come back as a living live character? Will they have to invade heaven, or will he be a ghost, or what do you think he's going to do?
The way that show is written, it could
Pure
be anything.
speculation.
Yes.
Or another flashback, even.
Yes, it could be that too.
I don't know. It's been 14 years. He looks older.
It wouldn't
be a very good flashback.
He's thinner too. Well, he might have put some more weight back on too, but he's going to look older than last time we saw him.
Yeah. That's the problem with androids and dead people. They're not supposed to age, but they do.
But they do sometimes.
And next up, we've got the original Leprechaun movie from 1993.
I had never seen this before, and I'm glad I did. It's a classic, and I feel like I've got that under my belt now.
You learn something every day.
I did.
Yeah, I definitely have seen this one before.
Warwick Davis, our favorite Ewok, and he was in Willow.
Oh, he's been in everything.
And lots of things, yeah. Yeah, anytime they need a very short actor, he did a ton of stuff.
Still does.
Still does. And stunts, doubles, things like that too.
And second billing was Jennifer Aniston, who has done a thing or two since also.
This was her first film appearance.
And I remember her being in it for 5 minutes, one of those small little quick, kill them off on the side type people. But no, she was actually the main star of the movie and was in it throughout.
And she's one of the Survivor girls, too.
And that's another thing. This movie has actually a fairly small body count.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's there, but not everybody gets killed off.
4 people die.
Four people?
Yep,
that was
I
your
counted.
count? Okay. Jennifer Aniston is teenage Jennifer Aniston at 22 years old.
Yeah, it's one of Kevin's big things is when you get an adult playing a teenager. And 22 is not that far from being a teenager, but
she didn't look like a teenager. No.
Before the credits even start, there's some carnage. Old man O'Grady just shows up one night in a limousine. Stops off at his house, and his wife's like, "What are you doing? This is going to cost us a fortune." He tips the driver $100 and says, "We're rich, we're rich." She looks at him like he's drunk again. Which, he is drunk again, but he's also right. He pulls out a big bag of gold coins.
He has just visited his mother's funeral in Ireland, and he brought back a couple souvenirs, one of which is a bag of gold. Unfortunately, the other is the leprechaun that the gold belonged to.
The man goes in the back room to do something, and his wife is making tea, and she hears, "Let me out, let me out." It's a little girl in a suitcase. So she goes and opens up the suitcase, and out pops not a little girl, but the leprechaun.
And this is a theme, one of his powers. He can change his voice to anybody's voice, children, characters in the movie.
And that's one of the neat things about the leprechaun is he has several different powers and interests, and we'll get to that a little later. But he's not just a slasher like Jason or somebody.
He's just misunderstood. He just wants his gold back.
He does. He wants his gold back.
Very obsessed.
So he very quickly kills the old lady, pushes her down the steps, and then the old man comes looking for her, and they get into a fight. The man pulls a gun and a 4-leaf clover.
And the guy, the leprechaun, reacts like it's a cross showed to a vampire.
Yeah, the 4-leaf clover does the same thing. So he gets cornered. The old man shoots him, which knocks the leprechaun down for a bit. He throws the leprechaun in a crate, nails it shut, and sets the leprechaun on top.
No, sets the 4-leaf clover on top.
Yeah, it's hard to put the leprechaun in the box and on top of the box.
Right.
The 4-leaf clover goes on top of the box, which seals the leprechaun inside. And then the man conveniently has a heart attack, and we presume he dies.
Well, and I think the leprechaun was still causing that. He had some residual power still that was fading. I think he caused the guy to have a stroke.
Yeah, maybe. He was drunk and old and carrying heavy things around. He could go either way.
But anyway, he collapses, and you're led to think he died.
Yeah, so all this is happening as the credits run, and now the movie actually starts.
10 years later.
Yeah, the little words come up on the screen. 10 years later, and the father and daughter, Tori and her father, are moving to the very same farmhouse in North Dakota.
He got a really good deal on it.
Yeah, and when you see the dust and the cobwebs, you know why. We're also introduced to a few other side characters. There's the caretaker, who is the hunky Nathan, and Tori immediately is attracted to him, and he's the reason she decides not to go back to town. Two of Nathan's friends are Ozzy, and he's a weird fat guy who immediately looks like he's going to be comedy relief, with his smart little sidekick friend, Alex.
Alex is actually the little brother of Nathan. That wasn't very clear, but I gradually picked up on that.
I thought they were all three brothers.
No, Ozzy's just somebody that we're taking care of.
All
Ozzy's kind of a simple-minded fella.
Yeah, very much. And that comes into the plot also. So, they're all three there to paint the house, and Ozzy has an accident. He spills some paint on himself. He goes inside to clean up, and he hears a girl crying in the cellar.
Because all the activity has awoken the leprechaun in the crate. He's been slumbering, trapped in there.
While he's down there, Ozzy removes the clover, and that releases the leprechaun. You would assume Ozzy would be immediately killed, but he wasn't. He manages to get away. And a little later on, Ozzy and Alex are outside taking a break, and they see a rainbow. And you know what happens with rainbows. You follow the rainbow to the end, where they find a beat-up old truck.
I thought it was pretty funny, though, in the middle of a bright, sunny day, suddenly there's this rainbow, and nobody says, that's really weird seeing a rainbow like that in a bright, sunny day. But anyway,
they follow it, and sure enough, they find the bag of gold. And that's when things start going south.
The leprechaun wants his gold. Badly. But he doesn't know, there must be no homing beacon or any way that he can sense his gold. He doesn't know where it is, where it was hidden, who has it, and so forth.
Got to track it down.
Yeah.
And then we're led to our first death. Ozzy and Alex take the gold to a local shopkeeper to verify that it's a real gold coin.
Just one of them.
Just one of the gold coins. Actually, there's 2 gold coins they take out. Ozzy bites on one of them and accidentally swallows it. Which, how you do that, I don't know.
Because he's a goof.
But he did it. The other gold coin they take to the shopkeeper in town who runs a collectible store, and he keeps it overnight to do some research on it.
And you immediately think, well, he's doomed.
And you'd be right.
Because the leprechaun wants that coin. He knows where one of them is. Yeah, goes after the shopkeeper.
Not going into too much detail, but this will be the only time in all of recorded cinema history where you will see someone pogo-sticked to death.
Yes, you heard that right. Death by pogo stick.
Yeah. And then a little later on, actually, the pogo stick is really just starting with a theme. The leprechaun is really into vehicles, and he's on a whole bunch of things. He's on the pogo stick. He's later on in a child's mini car, one of those little gasoline cars driving down the street. At one point, he goes back and forth on a skateboard, and he's on roller skates.
A tricycle.
And a tricycle. And at one point, he runs in the barn real quick and builds this thing that looks like something out of Mad Max, some kind of really weird, Mad Max type car.
With a pitchfork on the front.
Yeah, and at the very end, there's even a wheelchair race. Little guy likes to get around on his vehicles.
He does.
Tries them all. But probably the pogo stick is the main interesting one. Meanwhile, the teenagers are running around the house starting to panic because Ozzy has told them all about the leprechaun and nobody really believes him. But we spend some time there. But in the meantime, the sheriff's deputy runs into the leprechaun in his little mini car. He pulls him over for speeding, which, when you see a little child's car going 60 miles an hour down the road with an ugly leprechaun driving, you generally don't make fun of them. But this is not the brightest sheriff in the group. And he does.
Well, he doesn't think it's a leprechaun either. He thinks it's a kid in a mask. He finds out he's wrong.
And that would be death number 2 after they play hide and seek in the woods. At some point, all the teenagers are out doing something, and the leprechaun comes back to the house, goes through all the things looking for his gold because he can't find the gold, and then he gets sidetracked. He has to go and shine all their shoes.
He's obsessed with shoes. He mentions he was a shoemaker, and that made me kind of wonder if at one time he was human, because he said he sold his soul for the gold at one point, he mentions.
Yeah, I think that's the case. He was probably a shoemaker, sold his soul for gold, and that didn't work out so well for him.
And it's kind of an obsession with shoes now. So they come back to the house. It's been completely ransacked, especially the kitchen, except for the shoes that are all beautiful and clean and lined up on the table. And he comes in and the one guy says, "Oh, a bear must have got into the kitchen." And nobody says, "But what about the shoes that are all shined up and polished and lined up?"
Bears don't do that.
Bears don't do that.
So they hear something outside. Nathan goes outside with a gun, gets caught in a bear trap, but he managed to shoot the leprechaun. Leprechaun, of course, disappears, and it comes clear at this point that there really is a leprechaun. Everybody now believes in the leprechaun. And Tori goes out to the truck where the gold was hidden and returns all the gold to the leprechaun, which they figure is going to end the whole deal. Except Ozzy ate one of the pieces of gold.
So the leprechaun counts, it's 100 gold coins. He counts up to 99, and he's still pissed.
Yeah, he wants that last one. Got to have them all. So he goes and chases Ozzy around, and Tori goes to the old folks' home, where old man O'Grady isn't really dead. He had a stroke and he's been in this nursing home for 10 years.
The reason she goes there, because Ozzy said that the old man told him stories when he was a kid about fairies and everything, and he's sure the old guy knows how to kill a leprechaun. They have no idea how to really kill him.
Yeah, they've shot him a couple times now, and it's not really doing it. So they go to the hospital and talk to old man O'Grady, who isn't really in the room. Of course, they have a short conversation, the wheelchair turns around, and it's the leprechaun in disguise. Which then has a really good wheelchair chase through the nursing home. Really needed Benny Hill music.
It did. It would have been better with that.
Yeah. But at some point, she does run into the real Mr. O'Grady, who is also dying.
But luckily, not actually dead yet.
Not quite.
And has time to tell her how to kill the leprechaun.
Knock him down, put a 4-leaf clover on the body, and he cannot get up again. A lot like a cross on a vampire, almost.
Basically.
So they go home. She tells everybody that. They have to find a 4-leaf clover, and that's a bit of a search with some battling going on in the middle of it.
And the leprechaun, of course, doesn't want them to find. He knows what they're looking for.
So the leprechaun gets most of them cornered, and Alex, he takes his slingshot out after they find the 4-leaf clover, sticks the 4-leaf clover to a piece of gum, and uses a slingshot to shoot it down the leprechaun's throat, which then starts a special effects show as the leprechaun lights up, starts to melt, spout goop, and falls into a well. Everything's fine, the leprechaun's dead. Except he crawls back up in his usual "I'm not dead yet" kind of pose, and Nathan pours gasoline all over him, down the well, sets it on fire, and there is an overly excessive explosion.
The end.
The end.
Basically the end.
Except you hear a little voiceover at the end of the leprechaun vowing to get his revenge.
Something about, his body's dead, but his soul is going to curse this well forever, and...
I'll get my gold.
Yeah. Because leprechauns always get their gold in the end.
They do.
Yeah. It didn't have a whole lot of gore. It was actually... But one of my favorite scenes was... the leprechaun can be hurt with guns and so forth, but it doesn't last. He
takes a lot of damage.
At one point, his hand gets shut in the door. They
cut off.
And cut off. His hand is inside. He's outside. The hand crawls up the wall, opens the door, and crawls out. And he picks up the hand and runs off, giggling.
Then he gets his other hand severely burnt on a stove. He gets an eye put out.
But he plucks out the deputy's eye to replace it. That was pretty cool.
She uses a car lighter on the end of his nose. He gets beat up pretty bad.
But he just comes back from it.
He heals
until the four-leaf clover.
Yeah, he can take it. And the makeup for Warwick Davis is really good on this.
It was really realistic looking.
I'm not sure how much of that was prosthetics and how much of it was makeup, but his face gets a lot of screen time. He's not hidden in shadows, and it mostly looks pretty realistic.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so you like the movie? You'd never seen it before?
Overall, I give it a thumbs up. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
What would you give it out of 10?
I'd give it a solid 6.5 for sure, maybe a 7.
Okay, and I would agree. It's very entertaining for being as old as it is. It holds up pretty well.
A little bit tame, a little bit predictable. You can see the deaths coming and what was going to come.
But Mr. and Mrs. O'Grady, the sheriff, and the shopkeeper is the only deaths in the movie. There's only the 4. So, yeah, it's one of the tamer movies. It's got some good gore, but like when he pulls the eyeball out. But it's not bad. It's not something you'd want to hide from your kids probably too badly.
And, in fact, I guess it was originally intended as a kids' movie, like a Goosebumps level kids' horror. And they bumped it up. They decided in production, this would be a better adult horror movie. And so they added up the scares and the gore and so forth.
Well, the ratings on this are not as promising as what we just said. Rotten Tomatoes has a 23%, which is pretty low. Flickster is at 32%, and IMDb is 4.7 out of 10. I thought it was very entertaining. I'd definitely give it a 7.
It's a classic. It'll be around forever.
Yeah, they should make a sequel.
Well, as a matter of fact, they did. It made some money, and so what happens when movies like that make some money, they just keep making more. 8 more movies?
8 altogether.
8 altogether. 7 more Leprechaun movies.
Yeah, they made 7 additional movies. Leprechaun, Leprechaun Origins, Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun 4 in space, Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, Leprechaun Returns, Leprechaun Origin, and I might even be missing 1 or 2. But yeah, the Leprechaun gets around. It's nice, low budget. If you can hire Warwick Davis, you can make a Leprechaun movie.
And this might be one of the only movies where Vice President Dan Quayle receives special thanks credit.
Why?
His office sped up a working visa for Warwick Davis, who was British. He needed the permit and permission to work in the United States, and his office intervened and sped up the process.
Well, thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Vice President Quayle.
Any other good trivia on this one?
George Lucas also got a special thanks because I guess Warwick Davis was under contract with him where he wasn't supposed to be doing other work, and George Lucas made an exception. This was around Ewok time, I guess, or maybe that movie was in production. Something about George Lucas had to give permission and give Warwick some slack, some time off, basically.
Well, the movie was released in 1993, but it was completed in 1991, which would have been long after Return of the Jedi. But there may have been something going on at that point.
When did Willow come out? Was that was George Lucas too, wasn't it?
That was, yeah. 1988. So this is after Willow.
That was way before. Okay. Somehow George Lucas basically owned Warwick, but gave us permission to work on this.
Bought him at a droid sale or something.
It earned him a special credit in the film anyway.
Okay, and that is the original 1991 Leprechaun movie. And we'll never hear about another Leprechaun movie.
Yes, we will.
Oh, coming soon.
We're going to have to watch all of them now. We won't necessarily tell you folks about all of them, but I have to see all of them now.
Okay. Okay, and between the major features of the show, we usually will have a short film that we'll discuss. And this first episode, we're going to talk about the short called Blinky. What'd you think of Blinky?
I liked it a lot. It's just a independent little film, and no major producers or major actors in it. It's available on Vimeo for free.
We'll have links in the show notes.
It's sci-fi with a definite touch of horror in it. Starts out with a commercial for this friendly home robot.
Looks just like any other toy for children you'd see. The robot wants to be your friend.
His name is Blinky, and he's about the size of a child. He'd probably come up to maybe chest height on a adult.
And you see other robots throughout the story. There's an android walking down the street that's much more humanoid than Blinky.
It's definitely in the future.
Yeah.
And the effects are pretty good. I think he's CGI. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any practical effect of him.
Giant combat droid shown in the background during a news briefing. So anyway, the boy gets a Blinky toy for Christmas, and clearly he's in an unhappy household. The family is always fighting.
The commercial made me want to have one, too. I was thinking, I want a Blinky.
I still want one.
I don't want one now. No.
Anyway, the boy is growing up in a dysfunctional family, and he starts taking things out on the robot, and things devolve from there. No more spoilers. But it ends in a good way. It's very entertaining.
I give it 2 thumbs up. I thought it was really good. Definitely worth checking out.
Definitely. And it'll only cost you 12 minutes of your time. Again, the link's in the show notes. Check out Blinky. And it's free on Vimeo. Okay, and next up, we're going to move up to our modern feature. We said we'd never again look at another Leprechaun movie. Yeah, we lied.
I didn't say that. I said I wanted to see them all. And I got my wish with the next movie, which is not really the next movie, but sort of is. It's confusing.
There are 8 Leprechaun movies. First one, which we just talked about. And the most recent one, 2018, is the sci-fi original Leprechaun Returns, which, as being the 8th movie in the series, takes place immediately after the first movie.
It's a direct sequel made in 2018.
Start at the very beginning of the movie, you see the leprechaun falling down the well where they threw him at the first movie. So this is a direct continuation.
25 years and he's been trapped in the well.
But it has exactly the same cast.
Sorta.
Not really.
Ozzy is the same actor. Same character, same actor.
And they have mentioned the character of Tori, who was Jennifer Aniston. And surprisingly enough, the Sci-Fi Channel couldn't pay enough to get her back to resume her role.
They couldn't work it out. Not surprisingly that they couldn't afford her at this time.
Warwick Davis didn't reprise his role.
He did not. Although he said that he was tired of horror movies. He's basically got a family, and he said his priorities are different. Whether that was a case of him politely saying, "You can't afford me," or not, but that's the story. That's his official story, is he was offered it, he turned it down because of family reasons.
Probably a little more diplomatic than Jennifer Aniston just laughing for 20 minutes on the phone.
Saying, yeah, you can't pay me $20 million to do this movie.
Okay, so again, this is the 8th movie, but it's actually the second in the main sequence, so this is a direct sequel to the first one. There's this girl, who we later find out her name is Lila, who arrives at the Devil's Lake bus stop. Nobody's there to pick her up. She calls a cab, and who shows up but Ozzy from the first movie, who is now a sort of a taxi driver.
And handyman, and painter, and all that. He's still a simple fellow, but he doesn't seem as simple.
He's 25 years older, and he's experienced a lot of stuff.
Yep, he has. And the inside of his truck is obsessively decorated with 4-leaf clovers.
Why, I wonder. Okay, so it comes out in the discussion as they drive to where they're going that there's a bunch of college girls in a sorority. They're fixing up an old house to make it very energy efficient and a totally green house. And it turns out it's exactly the same house from the first movie. And just to make these coincidences even more perfect, Lila turns out to be Tori's daughter.
That's the Jennifer Aniston Survivor character.
And it comes up eventually that Tori has died in the meantime. And of course, she's been talking about the Leprechaun for 25 years, and not surprisingly, most people think she's crazy.
Turns out she wasn't.
Yeah, well, we know that. These people are never really crazy in these movies.
We know that. She doesn't know. They don't know that. Yeah.
So when Lila arrives at the sorority house, there's a bunch of girls there setting up a pump at the well. They're trying to make the house more green, so they're getting water naturally instead of from the city water.
Self-sufficient and all, but we're saying don't touch the well. Stay away from the well. They don't hear us or listen to us.
People are hearing strange noises from the well, but nobody really puts two and two together, which is odd because Ozzy and Lila are both aware of what the stories are. But nobody pays attention to these noises, and we move on. Ozzy drops his phone and drives away. And then there's a whole bunch of girl and boy romantic roommate drama that comes straight out of, CW type TV.
That was actually kind of dull, I thought.
There's 4 girls and 2 boys, and will they or won't they goes on for about 15 minutes to 2 or 3 hours, depending on how you... Time is relative with these things.
At least it wasn't adults playing high school kids this time, though. They're college age, and I thought they pretty much looked it.
Yeah, they were, low 20s. So Ozzy is driving home after dropping Lila off at the sorority house, and he notices his phone is missing, so he turns around and goes back for it, finds it fairly quickly, and he hears a sound from the well. Now, he knows what's in that well, so he pulls out one of the plastic 4-leaf clovers from his car, walks over to the well, looks over the edge, and boom! Something splashes him in the face.
Splush.
Green slime from the well. And he coughs and sputters and gets in his car and drives down the road. Pulls over because he's getting sick, vomiting all over. Walks out into the field. And sure enough...
Guess who busts out of his stomach?
Chest burster. It's the alien from... No, wait. It's the leprechaun.
Fully reborn.
Yeah, it turns out Ozzy still had that gold piece in his belly that he ate 25 years ago.
And that allowed the leprechaun to reform himself.
Sounds logical to me.
Perfectly. So anyway, the leprechaun's back. Looking better than ever.
And he even comments on that. He looks at his face in the mirror and said, "When did I get better looking?" Commenting on the fact, of course, that it's a different actor.
Which makes a sort of sense because he was, recreated from Ozzy's guts, basically.
Is he better looking? It's 25 years newer makeup effects.
The makeup effects are still really good.
I don't think it was as good as the first one. This one was a little bit slimier and wetter, which kind of made it look, I don't know, maybe more makeup-y. Mm-hmm. But it still looked very good. It was not bad makeup.
It did, yeah.
And this movie is also a little bit gorier than the first one. There's a lot more blood and guts, and the deaths are a bit more graphic.
Well, literally guts when he busts out of his stomach. But
well, yeah.
Throughout it, there's a lot more gore.
You can tell it's a more modern movie. The first one, there's a small gang of young people who defeated the monster. And this one is more the modern trope of the monster killing the young people. Tables are turned.
And he still wants his gold, so he's going to kill to get it back.
Only he has developed a new habit in the past 25 years. He now mostly speaks in limericks and rhyme. He didn't do that in the first movie. Okay, so after he kills Ozzy, he's wandering around and he kills the mailman. Sticks the mailman's head in the mailbox, and then drives over him in his mail truck.
And it seems like there's a little bit more in this one of him just killing for the thrill of it. Before, he was killing more as interrogation process or, tell me where the gold is or I'll kill you. And here he's kind of killing for the thrill.
And he kind of mentions at one point that the more he kills, it's a healing thing for him.
True, yeah, it gives him more power.
So he's killing for power.
So the mailman had nothing to do with the gold. The mailman had nothing to do with the gold. Just the poor guy gets, he's one of the bodies.
So there's a drunk girl. One of the sorority girls is constantly drinking, and I'd never picked up her name, and I'm not sure that it matters. And she's in the kitchen at one point, and the leprechaun appears to her, and she takes a selfie with him, which is kind of an ongoing joke because another character later on takes a selfie with him. If you saw a leprechaun, would you take a selfie with him?
I wouldn't.
I totally would.
No, I wouldn't.
It's way better than Bigfoot pictures. Anyway, he doesn't kill the girl in the kitchen. He makes some kind of a deal with her that we don't get to know about. A little later on, there's a guy named Andy who's out peeing in the woods, and he runs into the leprechaun also. They fight back and forth, and it seems like an even fight, until the leprechaun does something a little unique. He uses his magic to pull some screws out of the roof. These screws that the guy argued earlier were put in right, and turns out, no, they weren't put in right, just like he was told. The solar panel falls off the roof, straight down, and slices him in two vertically. He's got a front half and a back half, and he just splits down the middle.
Awesome gore.
Yeah, it was a good one.
If you're into gore, that's awesome.
And if you're not, don't watch this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, not too long after Andy gets cut in half, everyone drives off in their electric car, leaving Lila locked in the cellar. And strangely enough, at this point, she starts getting visions of Ozzy's ghost. Ozzy's dead, and he's clearly dead. His stomach's falling apart, and there's maggots dripping all over. But he tells her down in the basement about what clovers will do, and shows her a map to where the gold is, because Lila really doesn't know about the gold.
And the map mentions that the leprechaun is vulnerable to a clover.
Which will obviously come in useful later.
Mm-hmm. So hilarity ensues. They try to drive away. The leprechaun hunts them down by riding on a drone.
In the previous movie, he had the pogo stick. This one has
absolutely
death by
silly
drone.
as it sounds.
It was a good scene, though.
It
Drone
was.
versus car, and guess who wins? Oh, the car wins. But he manages to decapitate one person with a drone, which wasn't that impressive.
But I was kind of disappointed. That was Matt, one of the guys, and I was thinking he was going to hero in at the end because they kind of all leave him alone, and he's got the drone, and he's going to, lure the leprechaun away with the drone. And
yeah, and he's one of the more heroic characters. He seems like one of the good guys that should be alive at the end of the movie.
that's how I was picturing it happening, and
He gives this motivational speech about what Werner Herzog would do, and of course both the girls mishear him, and one of them gives the best quote probably the best quote of the movie. "Who the hell is Werner Herzog?"
Werner Herzog would be proud of you, is what she
Yeah.
tells him. And
And the filmmaker character, he just shakes his head. He knows they're idiots, but it's not worth explaining.
so the girls run off, and Lila has a necklace that looks like one of the gold coins. The leprechaun, at one point early in the movie, tries to grab it. It burns his hand. It was something from her mother, who said would protect her. And it turns out that's iron, pyrite. It's fool's gold.
And it hadn't come up before, but apparently the leprechaun is allergic or afraid of iron now, too.
Well, it burns him.
Yeah. It's just kind of a thing with supernatural creatures. Meanwhile, the drunk girl from before, she's betrayed everyone else, but the leprechaun has promised he won't lay a hand on her to kill her, and he doesn't.
No, he won't. What he promised was, I won't lay a hand on you.
And he doesn't.
Yeah.
He uses his magic as she runs through an irrigated field with sprinkler systems to turn on all the sprinklers, and the sprinkler heads shoot thoop, 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 one by one and hit her in the head, except for the final one, which goes straight down her throat, and her blood shoots out like a sprinkler.
He kept his word. He didn't lay a hand on her.
And it's kind of hilarious.
There's a lot of humor in this. A lot of dark humor.
A lot of silliness.
A lot of gore humor.
And then there's 3 girls left. They lure the leprechaun into the sorority house where they've set up a plan. They have an idea now.
He thinks he's going to get his gold, and they have found some of the gold, but it turns out one of the girls sold off the gold for financing the house.
To a We Buy Gold place in Bismarck.
So they can't give him his gold. They want to, but so they lay a trap with part of the gold and a bunch of iron.
They trap him in a circle of iron and shove a tube down his throat and pump him full of clover juice. Turns out one of the girls is big on juicing anything she can find and fermenting it and lacing it with vodka. But in this case, there's a tub of clover juice. They pump him full and he explodes violently with green slime and gore.
And then, thank goodness, it's over. He's dead.
So the two girls go outside, leaving one girl inside to gather up the pieces.
Because they're going to burn him to make sure that he's really gone forever.
Because they've already been told if there's any piece of the leprechaun left, he'll regenerate and grow back into himself.
Sure enough.
He does, but not like expected.
Each little piece, awesome.
Each little piece, and there's like a dozen of them, become little tiny mini leprechauns, like 5 or 6 inches tall.
And the mini leprechauns and the girl that's in the room have a little war.
Yeah, she kills a couple of them, bites one of their heads off quite dramatically, and kicks a few around and bounces them around. But finally they trip her, and she falls headfirst into the Golden
Trowel Award.
The Golden Trowel.
It's a trophy that's a gold trowel.
It's a metal shovel right through the head. All the way through the head, and of course you get a fountain of blood from that.
And then by the time the other two get in there, the small leprechauns are reforming into the big one again.
And then something. Gold is a conductor, and they stick some electrical wires on the pile of gold, which sets the leprechaun on fire. The fiery leprechaun then explodes, burns down the house.
What's worse than being chased by a leprechaun? Being chased by a flaming leprechaun.
Yeah.
Saying, I want my gold.
But he finally gets trapped inside the house and explodes with a giant shower of green spray above the burning house. The end.
Or so we think.
So what'd you think? Good in itself?
Good in itself. I didn't like it as well as the first one.
I thought it was very predictable.
I thought it was more predictable. I thought the sorority drama stuff was kind of dull. I thought the characters kind of ran together. At one point I asked you, who was the guy's name in blue? And you didn't know. And said, I don't know, it doesn't matter.
The filmmaker guy whose name we still don't know.
And it didn't feel like it mattered. Who they were.
How often does it matter in modern horror who these people are? There's one survivor, maybe 2, and the rest of them are death number 5 or whatever.
Pretty much.
And this was like that.
Somewhat.
Plus, you knew from the setting it was college kids out on an isolated farm, and there's a monster. What was going to happen? How it was going? They were going to get picked off one by one, which was one of the good things about the first movie. They didn't all die, or at least the main characters didn't.
Seemed a little less predictable the first time around.
Yeah, it was a little...
Maybe because there's been so many of this type of movie by now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't hate it, but I'd give it a lower rating. I think the first one was more like a 7. I'd give this one a 6.
I would have gone with maybe a 4.5 or a 5 on this one.
Yeah.
It was pretty predictable. Some of the deaths were creative, but I mean, you can watch all the deaths fast forward in 5 minutes and leave all the angsty drama out of it. Yeah, it had a few creative kills, but not much else.
The ratings, though, and reviews overall are better than the first one.
IMDb gives us a 5.4. Rotten Tomatoes is at 40%, and Flickster is at 75%. Rotten Tomatoes was 23% on the original and 32% on the original also. This is quite a bit higher. What do you think about that?
Did they buy ratings?
Yeah, this is a brand new movie out just a few months ago, or maybe even less than that, I don't know. But yeah, you got to wonder, did they buy ratings? It's Sci-Fi Channel, they're big on social media, they have lots of current viewers.
Could have been a lot of the marketing. Don't know. But anyway, we didn't think it was as good.
Nowhere near as good.
Yeah.
If you like the Leprechaun movie, it's not the worst in the series, that's for sure.
And if you're going to collect them all, be sure to see this one too.
Yeah, it's good, it's decent, it's just not great.
But I've heard that the actual second movie kind of doesn't explain where, like, suddenly he's there again, basically. And this one does directly happen after the first movie.
Yeah, this one basically overwrites the other 6 movies. You got the first one and the most recent one, and none of those others really happened. It's just alternate universe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Any good trivia or anything to wrap this one up?
Oh, in the trivia, it mentions that his eyes are different colors.
I never noticed that.
I did notice it, but what happened was, again, one of his eyes got gouged out.
They're not his eyes.
He took someone else's eye and shoved it in the empty socket, and then they were different colors.
That's just attention to detail.
And another attention to detail, in the first movie, Ozzy got his ear chewed up pretty bad by the leprechaun. And in this movie, he's got all kinds of scar makeup on his ear.
Yeah, they were clearly they clearly watched the first movie and wrote this one afterwards, ignoring everything in between. What do you think about the actor? The not Warwick Davis guy.
I thought he was very good. I had no issues with him.
I thought his voice was a little more Mickey Mouse-ish, a little harder to follow, maybe because of the rhyming.
I think it's because he was trying to do the sing-song rhyming thing.
Yeah. So I didn't like the voice as much, but I thought he looked just as good.
He didn't just talk in rhyme, but he threw in rhymes a lot.
A lot
of
more
them.
of it. Yeah. I didn't notice any rhyming in the first one. Maybe Warwick Davis just does a better Irish accent.
Maybe. He is English.
Yeah.
I'm not
they
sure
know how they all speak over there. It's they're neighbors.
This actor is Lyndon Porco, and I don't know if he's British or not.
So he did a good job, just sounded a little bit different. The voice obviously is not the same.
I think he was a little bit more spry.
Well, Warwick Davis is getting kind of old. How old is he now?
Oh, now?
It's a modern movie, 2018. Well, Warwick Davis was born in 1970, so math says that's 48 years old.
He would have been 21 in the first one.
So that's not really old. I would have thought he was older than that, considering just how many movies he's been in since like the 70s.
And it's hard to say, being a little person, he may have
There could be
health
medical
issues.
problems there too, yeah.
Yeah, health issues, joint issues.
He is still working.
He is.
Let's see, he's got Valeria 3D, Moomin Valley, Master Moly, and Horrible Histories, the movie that he's currently filming. And he recently showed up in Solo, a Star Wars story, as the character Weasel. And before that, Star Wars Rebels, Harry Potter, the whole series of that, of course. A lot of things. Definitely still very busy at the ripe old age of 48.
Just doesn't want to do horror movies anymore.
Okay, so Leprechaun Returns from 2018. Rush right out and see that on Sci-Fi Channel or pick up a DVD at Amazon. We'll have a link in the show notes.
Amazon Prime, it's available.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
And it looks like the sun is starting to come up, so we're going to have to get going. The drive-in is closing down for the weekend. Stop in during the week at www.horrorbulletin.com for updated news and horror updates, to comment on this podcast, or to contact us with glowing fan mail, comments, complaints, or obscene gestures. It's all good. I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin.
And please pick up your snacks before you leave the drive-in.
Let's go up to the lobby.
Wow.
No?
Pick up your final popcorn before we lock the doors. And drive back in next weekend.
See ya.